Hey guys, so I am in Prague right now, and I'm here speaking with Martin Berry, who is the founder of reSITE and Manifesto Market. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm well. I'm not always drinking. Sorry, you caught me in introduction
sorry.
having a drink, but
It's a chill interview. You can go ahead and drink whatever.
no, I'm doing well. It's like a beautiful afternoon. It's a little bit chilly, but it's cool. I'm happy to meet Sharon and talk about whatever she wants to talk about.
Yeah, so I wanted to kind of learn more about reSITE and Manifesto Market. So basically, my friend and I, we went to Manifesto Market the other day. It's kind of like this venue with different shipping containers and like vendors, all different cultures and stuff like that, with food, drinks, music, and book. Like, that was really cool. We were just like, wow, there's like this little bookstore with really like a good curation.
Book therapy, yeah, this is an amazing bookshop.
Yeah, I was like, the book selection's really good, and we were just like feeling the vibes. The aesthetic was really nice.
Yeah.
It's super visually appealing. I was just thinking it'd be so cool to have that where I live. You know, where I live is like the suburbs, and it's kind of nothing there.
Yeah, but we want to do that everywhere, basically. So we're ready. Like, you saw just the first one, and it's sort of an experiment for us to build. It's our first time doing anything in real estate or anything, and definitely in food and beverage. We usually like design experiences, and we see this as like a kind of cool experience that people can come and they get like a variety of food from 20 different restaurants. They can like buy books from like an independent bookseller and get, just an interesting experience that you wouldn't normally expect in a city like Prague. It's kind of like total experiment for us, but it's working. So we should go next to San Francisco or Fremont or wherever you want us to go.
Oh, that would be amazing. I mean, yeah, maybe we can like talk about your story, how you started, I guess, with like design, architecture, and then moving into reSITE, and then moving into Manifesto Market.
Sure, yeah. No, I'm super confusing. Actually, I didn't tell you earlier, but like I started like when I was in school, I studied to be like a historian. Actually, I studied history and business, and then I actually got a degree in landscape architecture, a master's, and so I was in New York for like 8 or 9 years, and I was practicing landscape architect underneath my mentor, then Barbara Wilkes, and then eventually was like kind of leading design projects for that office for 8 years, and I was like a little bit bored, and maybe it was like a tough time during the recession, so I was invited here to Prague on a fellowship. So I started teaching on this Fulbright fellowship, and it was like total experiment. I didn't know anybody in Prague. I was sort of alone, and after like 24 hours, I thought like, what the fuck did I just do? It was just the stupidest thing. I left New York, which is like my hometown, my favorite city in the world, and I came to this really strange foreign place. At that time, I thought like Eastern Europe, this like really strange land.
Wait, how long ago was this?
2012, so it was like 6 or 7 years ago.
Okay. Was Prague really different back then?
Yeah, it changed a lot. I mean, it was like at the time, like it had already been changing, right, since like the early 90s, but like I never came before that. So it was like when I came, there was basically like only like a few places that like you or I would want to eat, right? It was like the food was really kind of like locally based, Czech food, local like Central European food, and I was like, I tend to like really like food experiences and food culture, so I was always starving and looking for things to eat, and particularly like I try to eat it, like I'm always eating late, like 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, and I'd come out of the office or something or my friend's place, and there'd be nothing to eat except for like McDonald's or something like this.
Wow.
So I was sort of like starving for food, and that's one of the reasons why I started Manifesto. So the food scene completely changed in the last like 7 years. It's much more cosmopolitan now, like much more international scene, and I think we're a driver of that also. It's sort of like creating a little bit of change in the food scene.
Ooh, cool. And was reSITE first though?
Yes. So I started because I was sort of bored teaching when I first came here and I didn't know anybody. I thought like I've got to do something to meet people. So I don't know why, but I started a nonprofit and like a nonprofit organization. And this was like a really good way for me to kind of like engage with the local like design community and architecture community. And so I made a lot of friends and like business partners through this nonprofit. And what we did was organize like events. We organized conferences and like salon discussions, and we organized a festival with this crazy art installation in a public square. And people liked this. Like somehow like it was a new idea and still pretty fresh. And since then we've organized like 170 events like on architecture and kind of public space in like Lisbon, Berlin, and here in Prague. And so this was kind of the start of it. And then I like I was doing a lot of that from New York, actually. I moved back to New York in 2013, and then I was kind of managing it from there, and it was too much. I was flying like from like China to Canada to Mexico, back to New York to Prague, like on a weekly basis. And I was like 32 years old, and I was just sort of like a little bit burnt out of that. So I decided to move here full time like 3 years ago.
Okay.
And then I got bored of doing just events. So I was like, we don't want to just talk about architecture. We want to build. And so I found that like as an architect, you work for clients, right? And you have to kind of like, you follow the client's script, and you're kind of at like beholden, or like you're at the you have to just do what they say, basically. So I didn't like that. Like I like to do my thing. I like to kind of like direct my own work. And so with Manifesto, I thought like, well, let's build something. Like, let's do something that I want to do that I think will be the best solution. And then if I make a mistake, like it's my fault. Like I don't have to blame the client or whatever, be like reliant on a good client. So now I want to be a good client, basically, for other architects. And so I think now like that's the future for me, is to build more and to kind of be like an experiential developer, like develop food experiences, hospitality experiences, like more entertainment-based experiences, but in real estate, like property.
Got it. So maybe we can back up with reSITE first.
Yeah.
Like, what were the steps to even start that up? I mean, you didn't know anyone, right? And how difficult was that? It seems very difficult to do that.
Yeah, it's really difficult. I had to, like, I was teaching with another American at the university, and he said, like, that sounds like a great idea to do a festival or conference on, like, architecture and public space, which was in a different way than, like, other people that organized this kind of thing in this part of Europe. So he introduced me to, like, one of his students who would be kind of, who volunteered for a long time, almost like a year for the organization. And then I met someone else through another colleague who was, like, just starting an architecture school. So the kind of 3 or 4 of us got together and we figured it out. We applied to the local office for the license to do a nonprofit.
What's that like? Is it you just pay a fee and then you, like, how does that work?
Yeah, I felt like at that time everyone and their mother had a nonprofit. And
really?
Because like
I don't know anyone with one, actually. So.
No, I know, but here it's different. Like there actually aren't so many incentives to have a nonprofit organization. Like there's no real tax incentive to do so. It's pretty easy to apply. You have to pay like $50 and fill out a form, basically. So it's like a library card kind of.
Oh, okay. Do you have to have like residency, or like how does that work? Can you be a foreigner?
For a nonprofit, you can be.
Okay.
Like I'm the chairman still of the nonprofit, and I'm a foreigner.
Okay.
For businesses, it's a little more complicated. Like now I have like 7 or 8 businesses based in Prague, and like you have to have more permanent residency and more paperwork for this. It's more complicated. I don't know, the process was just trying to meet as many people as I could, and I was really fortunate that in Prague, like it's a relatively small city, so you can kind of meet people pretty easily, like once you're in a kind of network or some kind of like industry. And so I met a lot of people that really thought my idea to kind of bring a new discussion on architecture, like about contemporary architecture and contemporary public space, was needed. So they all kind of like really helped out. There's a lot of like people I still consider friends to this day that I met in those first few weeks or months, and they wanted to contribute like to our conference or help connect us to other people like graphic designers or videographers or people that could kind of help put it together. So we're really fortunate that like the community is pretty small and pretty tight, and we were able to kind of like work with each other and collaborate.
So a huge part of it was that networking. And did you go to a bunch of meetups and things like that to meet all these people, or how did you do that?
Yeah, like a lot of the meetings were like through word of mouth. I didn't go to like these kind of networking things. I'm not really good at that. I'm a little shy in those environments. So
me too.
Yeah, like, I'm sort of like, I'm not so great at these like new kind of networking things. I usually have a glass of wine or like a coffee, and then I skip out the back door.
Yeah.
I did that last night actually at a party. I came to give a speech, and I was there to give a speech, and I was there for an hour, and like literally 5 minutes after I walked off stage, I had just left the event.
Okay.
Without saying it.
Nice.
We call that the Irish exit.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, like how did it work? Like I just tried to talk to people like whatever at parties, or people would introduce me to their friends, and then I would be really good about like pushing really hard to meet those people like through the contacts I was supplied, like through emails or whatever. Like it just takes a lot of work to do the network networking and you know, just not be afraid that people are going to say no, because especially when you do something new, like everyone says no. Like almost like 95% of the things you ask for are they're going to be turned down. So
that's what it was like when you were, okay.
Mostly. It's still like that. In fact, like it's really funny for me to be here because I'm a foreigner from New York City, and I don't really have a deep network from like, you know, many people know each other for like many years here. It's just a smaller community, and I'm always turned down. Like, people think I'm like an animal in a cage. They sort of like, you know, they like to look at me, but like they don't really engage so deeply with me. So I'm kind of used to being turned down. You have to be, I think, if you're gonna be kind of like successful or whatever, you know, you define success to be. If you want to like get to the next step, you have to be turned down a lot, which kind of sucks, but you just have to deal with it.
Really? Yeah. I need to be more like that. That's good.
Well, I don't know. It's like
it's like strength.
Yeah, you have to have really thick skin and not be afraid to fail. Like,
yeah.
I talk to people that work with me a lot about failing. Like, I'm totally fine if we make mistakes. Like, because if we don't make a mistake, it means we didn't do anything. We didn't try. So everything that we do is new. Like, I never organized a conference before I organized the first reSITE. And like almost 10,000 people came to that event.
What?
Yeah. We organized it in 5 months. And like, we think about 8,000 to 10,000 people came because there was a kind of big public part of the event.
Wait, so what was this event about?
This was an event about architecture and public space. And we brought like a architecture pavilion, kind of like a big piece of art from London, and we installed it on one of the main squares in Prague. And so we did like films there, discussions, we did a party, some dancing lessons, and then of course we had like a conference inside the building which talked about architecture in a more kind of professional format. And I was shocked by how many people came, and we had never organized anything like this before.
Okay.
I had organized like a keg party in college, and that was the only thing I had done. Yeah.
I mean, okay, what were the steps to do that launch of like that event? Did you make videos advertising it? Did you put up paid ads or like nothing? Was it just word of mouth?
We did a lot of social media work. We also ran a Kickstarter campaign, so we were one of the first kind of architecture projects that had been successful on Kickstarter, architecture and event project. Kickstarter had just launched like a year earlier, and I was kind of following this because it was a New York-based company. So that was helpful. We got like a lot of word on the street like based on this, and then we just worked a lot on social media because we had no money, right? Like we organized this totally on a at risk, and so mostly it was like through word of mouth, friends, networking. And since then, I'd say like the biggest part of my team and the nonprofit, and also in Manifesto, like the property development company, is marketing. So like actually we put a lot of resources into the marketing because I feel like we're kind of building brands and experiences. That's an really important part for me. We do something. It's not just the brand, but like it's really important to kind of like leverage what we can build on the brand, like to use that to kind of find new audiences, new customers for the market, this kind of thing.
Okay, and this event was in Prague or in New York or where?
This first event was in Prague.
And they have Kickstarter here? I don't even know how it works here.
No, there are some local Kickstarter kind of like copies here.
Got it, okay.
But no, at that time we used Kickstarter, and basically it was actually the first project in the country that was on Kickstarter.
Okay.
I'm not even sure you can still do that. Like from Prague, you can still put projects on Kickstarter, but then you could. Basically anyone in the world could kind of submit a project if you had a U.S. bank account. And so I had a U.S. bank account and cards, so I could launch.
So you did this like with a small team of people?
Yeah, there was like 3 or 4 of us.
Wow, okay. And you guys just strategized, you guys thought could be the best way to bootstrap this event?
Yeah, and we worked for like 26 hours a day.
Oh my God.
No, we just worked around the clock basically for 5 months. Like it was a really kind of stressful time, but it was so much fun because when you're starting something and you don't really know what you're doing, I mean anyone who works in like startup industry or like starts new companies or new projects, you know the feeling, like you're so driven, like your blood is pumping so fast all the time. You're this hot-blooded like creature just like trying to succeed on these like everything's a challenge. Like, you know, we didn't know how to market an event. We didn't know how to do the programming or the sort of production or anything. We didn't even know what kind of people we needed. Now this is more like a machine. Like not really. We're still making a lot of mistakes, but it's getting like easier as the time goes by. But then we didn't really know what we were doing.
Wow.
It was kind of exciting and really scary at the same time.
That's super cool. Okay, so your team, it was like 3 or 4 people you said, right? Or
then.
And how did you pick these people? Like, was there certain qualities about them you thought you could work well well with them? And are you still working with them with reSITE and Manifesto? Or?
That original team, this is also an interesting part about starting a kind of project like this without like any base of funding or money. Mm-hmm. We started it on a whim. Like I was responsible for it ultimately, like from the budget, but you kind of like have to attract people that are really interested in the topic, and we all volunteered. I volunteered for the first 3.5 years of this of reSITE. Basically, I had another job, so I was able to do that. But the others, like they also had other jobs, or they're in university, like they're graduate students or something. So they committed a lot of like volunteer time, and without them, like we couldn't have done it. Actually, people committed so much of their energy to it. Mm-hmm. But when people commit a lot of energy, like particularly on a volunteer basis for like let's say 3, 6, 9 months or a year, like they get really burned out, and then like have some problems in the team and stuff. So we had some like growing pains in the first couple years, and then actually none of the original team members are there except for me.
Oh, okay.
So I'm still close with a couple of them, but they moved on to different stuff now.
Okay,
yeah.
So it wasn't like you co-founded reSITE with them; it was your thing, and then other people who are passionate about it came through.
Yeah, like
that's pretty cool.
I pitched the idea to other people, and that's when like people started to approach me and said like they'd like to help, or they'd like to help organize it, or whatever, like join the team. Ultimately, the team that year was like in that first year was probably like 20, but there was like 4 people on the core team, and I should say actually the one person on the board with me actually is from the original team. That's incorrect. So she's like my co-board member. There's 2 board members now, and she's one of them. Yeah, but ultimately it was like 20 people. So it's like a study in doing events and management and everything. Cool. Yeah, it was really cool. It's really fun. Okay. And Manifesto now is the same way. We didn't know anything about what we were doing in real estate or technology or food and beverage, and we kind of had to build all the experience ourselves.
Wow. Okay. I asked about the co-founder or team situation because I was wondering, because whenever I start projects, I find that like finding the person to partner with or something like that it can be kind of difficult. You don't want to like ruin a friendship or something like that, and also sometimes I start to feel like just making it myself is easier than working with someone else. Yeah. Do you find that? Like, do you like working on it as you're the sole founder?
Yeah.
You prefer that?
Yeah, I think it really depends, but like of course you need like complementary skill sets, like someone who can offer something different than you can when you start an organization or a company. But it gets like really tricky, like especially when you're not really sure, like when you start something and you're really passionate, you're not really sure exactly what your responsibility is and what the other person's responsibility is, right? You just like do it full speed. Then when things start to settle down a little bit, then you start to say like, wait a minute, like I've put more work in, or that person's put more work in, and then you both think it's unfair, and so this is a really sticky situation. Yeah. And you don't want to lose friends over this. It's really painful. It can be really painful. Like in Manifesto, for example, I was the founder and CEO and the majority shareholder, and I knew from the experience at reSITE that this needed to be defined really clearly. And so any investors that came on like early, which are friends and family primarily, they were either just lending us money or lending me money. Sorry to talk about the money, but like it's really important, especially when you're kind of dividing the company. They either lent us money, or if they're investing and coming into the company, they were seed investors, and like you have to hold the rights, because like if you're going to take responsibility for the project and pay back all the investors and stuff, you need all the responsibility. Like you need to make the decisions, I think, if you're confident to do so. I don't know why, but I was sort of confident in this case in Manifesto to kind of like lead the ship and pull it forward. Okay. But it's complicated though, like because you also want to do something with a friend. You just need to be clear like about how you divide the responsibilities, and I think once it's clear and it's written down, it's okay. Okay. When it's unclear, it can be a little bit hairy. Yeah, definitely. Okay, you mentioned the money aspect, and I mean, I was actually going to ask you like how you got that initial funding for Manifesto. I guess moving on to Manifesto Market, how that came about. Were you guys already huge with reSITE and it wasn't that difficult, or was it still like a difficult process? So I asked a few questions there. I feel like the funding part and just like the entire process. Yeah, no, the team, like I think reSITE, like let's say we started Manifesto really thinking about it like, well, the first time I thought about it was really early in reSITE's like history, like 2013, and I created like a 5-page proposal and I presented it to some companies and about like kind of doing it more like a sponsorship basis. Like we approached like Vodafone and like some of the other technology companies. And they were like, what? No, I don't want to do that. They didn't understand it, like containers and cafes and stuff. They were like, they didn't get it. And we weren't big enough, and I wasn't spending enough time to actually do it as a real project. So we just kind of like put it on the shelf. And then when I moved back to Prague in 2015, I was like, well, maybe we should try to do this again. Like maybe the market's more like open to this kind of thing now. My team at reSITE at that point was like bigger. We were probably like close to 12 or 15 people, and we had like not much time, but we had a little bit more time to spend on something like this. So actually I paid the team at reSITE like for probably 9 months or more, like to develop the ideas. And we actually did a student competition, which the first design, like the manifesto you saw, is primarily designed by students. And then when they won the competition, then they finished their school, and then that became their first project. That I kind of led them, but it was their design. And then someone in my reSITE office was helping them on some of the details and stuff. Elvira, she's an amazing architect that works for me. And so like I basically funded it for the first like 9 months on reSITE, and then it became a real project, right? We had something to show, we had a design. Okay, so we worked for like a year, and we had like reSITE had produced a design with those student architects, Mika and Lucy, and then Elvira in my office as an architect helped kind of like make it more real. Then we put together some partners like from around Prague based on our reSITE kind of connections and work. Like our local partner Aero Films was amazing, like a film distribution company that wanted to work on this also because they have bar experience. Then we had something like the design, we had the site, we had the partners, and we had a team, and so it was easier to kind of attract funding for it. So I asked friends and family, basically, this is the place to start when you have like a good idea, you really trust it. So we asked friends and family, and we got like a first seed investment from a friend that lives in Prague, an American friend who's still a partner in the company.
Do you create those contracts to like your friends and family? Okay.
You have to.
Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah. Is it difficult to like write it out? Do you have a lawyer do some stuff with that? Or?
Well, now we have like don't ever start a company, because then you have to get lots and lots of stuff like lawyers, and we have like 4 different law firms we work with now.
Oh, wow. Okay.
1 in New York and 3 here. And actually today we just hired an internal lawyer. So like, when you go bigger, you just get more problems. And I used to write the contracts myself, like the first like NDAs and that kind of stuff. I wrote myself with some advice from New York. And then now we use external lawyers for most of the big stuff. And but anyway, like whenever you kind of take money from somebody, you have to have some kind of contract. And before you even get to that point, you have to sign an NDA, like a non-disclosure. So if you share lots of information, they don't like leak it or take it themselves. So we try to protect everything, and then we kind of enter the negotiation about like if they're willing to invest some money. And then we write some kind of like shareholders agreement. And it's important to really pay attention to that stuff, because I think that's where it gets a little bit complicated. If like either if it fails or if it's successful, you have problems both ways.
How did you say you got the vendors?
Yeah, this is also like things like with Manifesto kind of came together because I think Prague also is interesting in this way. Like it's a small city, so it's easy to kind of connect with people. Like I said with reSITE, of course I used a lot of the connections I had with reSITE to kind of open the project up and make it start to become real. But I was still really nervous to talk about it, like because we didn't have any money yet, right? So most of the people were still employed with reSITE, and so I did an interview, and I thought like, okay, if this project's really going to happen, maybe I should seed this somehow in the newspaper or a magazine. So I did an interview in a marketing magazine, like very strategically, because I thought maybe like a big partner might find it and say like, wow, great idea, like we'll be a partner on that.
Did you reach out to them? Like how did that work?
No, they actually approached us for an interview with me because we do some interesting marketing for reSITE, so they wanted to kind of like see our strategy as a nonprofit. It's kind of rare to do such like, let's say, I don't know, to spend so much time on the media and marketing. So they wanted to talk to me about that, and we were like, okay, we want to seed just one thing. So I put like one line in there that we're thinking about doing this pop-up food market, and it would be like in the next year, maybe like 9 months from when that article was published. And like literally like the day it was printed, we got a phone call from this guy who just started his own like commercial leasing agency, Evo, and Evo's still working with us now. He has a startup that uses some technology to find kind of like vendors interested in pop-up spaces. So that's his real estate model. He wants to kind of find short-term spaces for people, which is like a perfect pairing for us. Like we want no longer than like 1 year leases, and that's like what he does. Okay. So he's like, hey man, like awesome project. I want to be part of your team, and I'll give you like some time, to find the partners. And after a while, we put him on retainer, like a monthly salary, just kind of keep him like engaged. And basically, he worked for a year to kind of like attract the partners and everything. Everybody did this on like a whim. Like they were like, we trust this crazy American, like that he can do this.
Wow.
And so,
that's so cool.
Yeah, people put a lot of trust in me, which is also like, it's heavy, but if you feel like you can deliver, it's like it's really cool because people will get behind you if you can kind of like inspire them. And I'm really thankful that like people trust me so much because otherwise we couldn't do it without other collaborators and people.
Yeah.
And the ownership thing I talked about is like not because like you want to like you don't trust anybody and you want to like keep people out of your space. It's more people are going to trust you. You need to kind of like have the control to do what you need to do to get the project done. And so that's why I think it's really important to define that early.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I guess back to the vendors part, you said once you got that other company, that partnership, did that just somehow spark like all these food vendors to work with you? How did that work?
That's an interesting story too. Yeah. Well, because I had never done a real estate development project like as a developer. I was the architect, right? And so we really didn't have, as an architect, you don't have so much insight into the leasing part or the business part of like the commercial side of the business. Like you just are tasked to design something. But as the owner and the developer, like I had no idea how hard it was to lease 25 spaces that were only like like 30 square feet, no, maybe like 100 square feet each, and to do it all at the same time within like 4 months. I had no idea how hard that was going to be. And I'm really happy we found Ivo because he was like, yeah, we could do that. And everyone else I've talked to about that since, they're like, you're insane. Like it's really hard to lease retail space and food space, like gastro space, especially where we are like, we're in the center of the city, so it's like not so cheap. And so we did it like in 4 months. We leased 25 spaces, which was really cool.
Wait, did they build the spots and then you guys rent that spot?
We built everything. So everything you see at the market we built, but inside the containers they build. So all the kitchens and stuff they install themselves.
Oh, okay.
So we provide them like design guidelines, and we try to control at least like how it looks and how it feels. We want to make sure it's like bright enough and it looks like professional. Mm-hmm. So we try really hard to work with them closely on the design, but it's their responsibility ultimately. So we provide what we call like shell space. We just kind of build the containers and we build the public space. And then we do like, I don't know, it's kind of boring, but like in property or real estate, it's called space as a service. So they rent the space, but they also get a full service. They get like the marketing, branding, all the communications and PR. They get the site staff, like the cleaning and basically everyone that you see that works there works for me basically, except for inside the kitchens. So they rent the space, but we provide everything else. So it's this kind of like WeWork model for restaurants. It's kind of a new model.
Yeah, I think I need to like clarify how it works. So you said you own the space. You own the land and everything, and then you have and then these vendors rent the spaces from you. Yeah. So like our real estate is containers, right? It's like we have these black containers, and which you can see hopefully in this video, and then we rent those small containers to the merchants or like the kitchens or restaurants or the bookshop, for example. And then like once you open the door, like it's their responsibility. So they put in like the stove and like all the kitchen equipment, all the furniture that go inside. That's all theirs, and all the staff that works inside the containers, that's theirs. Basically, like where we have a lot of public or communal space. So basically, we rent the merchants or the restaurants those black containers. Inside is their responsibility, and outside is our responsibility. So all the tables and everything, like that's us. We provide that, and we also clean them, and we provide all the marketing and everything. So we do all the social media, all the communications and PR. That's on us. All the branding and everything, that's on us too. And we do the design of like the general design of the area, but not inside the containers. Got it. Does that make sense? That makes sense.
Okay.
The company you partner with, was the name Evo?
His name is Evo.
Oh, his name's Evo, and then was he responsible for getting the vendors, or am I confusing that? Okay.
No, he's like the leasing manager. So leasing means he finds the businesses that want to rent space.
Got it.
And he kind of like sets up the contract with them and leases it to them. And him and I kind of set the price and everything like that.
Okay, so he was able to acquire it for you. Yeah, that's awesome. Okay.
Yeah, it's super cool because he has like he's in this kind of like commercial real estate world, and he had a lot of contacts because he wants to be in like the food kind of part of that business. Mm-hmm. So he had a lot of restaurants in his contacts that he was able to use. Of course, we wanted the best restaurants. So we approached these best restaurants in Prague, and we'd say like, we're going to do this food market. It's going to be like street food, but at a lower price than your normal restaurant. So you should produce something cool, and it's going to be next to the highway, and it's going to be in shipping containers. And everyone's like, what? So basically the first like few months was like kind of a total failure. Like we had like everyone basically said like, I'm not going to open a restaurant in a container. I'm not going to open a restaurant next to the highway or underneath the highway, which is how they described it. And 3, like we're in a part of the city which is kind of in Prague. It's in the center, but it was like kind of a crappy place before we went there. It was like it was empty. There was a lot of garbage on the land. It was kind of like there was a fence around it. People used to get robbed or mugged there all the time. So when we approached like like white tablecloth restaurants or like 5-star restaurants, we'd be like, yeah, we've got this great place and it's going to serve street food underneath the highway. And we told them where it was and they were like, you can't serve food there. Like, no way, like it'll fail. Everyone told me it would fail, except for the people that gave me the land. They thought like, okay, it's your responsibility, like go for it. And basically we had to convince everybody to be there. And like, I also give them a lot of credit. They took a huge risk also.
What made you choose that plot of land if everyone was saying no? Was it cheaper? Was it the mission to make something like crappier, nicer?
That's exactly it. Yeah, like I don't know, my mission has always been to kind of improve the city, and that's like reSITE's mission, and it's also part of Manifesto's mission, that we want to take a bad place and make it a lot better. So I love that people thought that was a bad location. In fact, there's like 2 stories around this. People said like, no way anyone will go to serve food there, like it's a bad location, like you can't really have a restaurant or a market there. And now when I talk to people like in the media or private partners, like other businesses, they say like, oh, Manifesto is super cool, and it's because it's a great location. And I just have to like laugh because everyone told me it was like a shit location and they wouldn't go there. And the other story was like, people told me like I couldn't serve food there because the highway smelled too bad. And I was like, I don't know what that means. Like, I live in New York City, like we're surrounded by highways, and like California, like, you can serve food anywhere basically. And then like 2 weeks after we opened, my friend, one of my friends who told me that I couldn't serve food there, he gets stuck in traffic on the highway, like right next to where we are. It's sort of like we're down here and then like the highway is above, and so he's stuck in traffic here like almost every day. And so he said like, you guys are geniuses at marketing, like you must be blowing the smells of meat at the highway, because like I'm sitting in my car in summer and I can smell steaks, and like all I want to do is pull off the highway and have a beer and a steak. So now the smell of food is actually overcoming the highway. I love that because like, it takes everyone. We didn't actually blow the smell of food, of steak, but we should have, but it's just naturally that's how it works. We're influencing the highway versus the highway influencing us. So the only lesson is like, if you believe in something, you can't listen to all the like the people,
haters.
Like the haters, yeah. They're gonna hate, and you just gotta like plow through it.
I think if you have like that deeper mission or purpose, it trumps everything, huh?
I think so, yeah. You have to be a little bit stupid, and I think I'm a little bit stupid, so I think that's what makes it work, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm stubborn, Irish American, so it's easy. Don't listen to
I need
anybody.
to be more like that. I think because I'm like Asian, I'm supposed to like listen to other people, but I gotta be more like individualistic and go for things.
Be a little bit more of an asshole. You have to like just you have to just be a little bit more pushy and a little bit more stubborn, I think, sometimes. Not always. Like I generally like people, I don't know, I try to be like really amenable and really like kind to people and everything, but I think sometimes you have to be a little bit stubborn and just kind of like put your head down and push through the walls.
Going back to the question about the funding. So the funding went into the land as well as the containers and the setup and everything, right? Was it a lot? I guess it's relative, but I don't want to like ask specific numbers or anything. Just wondering how difficult that part was. And did friends and family cover everything, or did you had to get a lot more?
The seed funding, as we call it, like initial like round of funding was like we call it like equity funds. Like they contributed money and they became part of the company. That was my friend Mike and Vera, and that was like, I don't know, it's like maybe $40,000 US. So it's just a relatively small amount of money for an investor, but like it helped us get started because like reSITE couldn't really fund this anymore. It was like going on for 9 months or a year, and it wasn't really our mission to become like a real estate developer. So I didn't feel comfortable continuing to employ the team there. So that money like basically helped us get to the finish line and like finish the architectural drawings and this kind of stuff, and like add 1 or 2 people to the team. And it lasted a few months. Like our burn rate was pretty low, so it lasted like several months. And then it got us to the point where I could negotiate with like a friend of a friend who's also an investor locally, and he loaned us the rest of the money. basically. And then we got like, because we had that, I was able to get MasterCard as a partner. We had the design, we had the site or the location, we had some funding, and then MasterCard kind of like, they really loved the project. Because what we didn't mention is this is one of the first cashless projects in Europe where like you don't spend cash there, you can only use a credit card or digital payments, which is kind of controversial, particularly in California. But this is the future, so we decided like we'd take a big step and try it. And so MasterCard jumped on board as like a sponsor for this part of the business. And also they sponsor the culture program. So we have like maybe 5 nights a week. We have DJs, films, live bands, and this was also supported by MasterCard, which is really cool.
The initial 40 grand covered the land, or?
No, it covered the team.
Okay, it didn't cover the land yet. You didn't have that yet.
No, we had the land, but in fact, it's almost gifted to us. Like I have a partnership with the owner, and basically we kind of promote them as the owners, and like there's a project that they will build in the future, and so we're kind of helping them like promote that project and promote the land, and they give us a really friendly rent.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's like a really important model for like the startup of the project. But they also trusted it, and they trusted that I could deliver it.
Okay, wait. So it was a separate. I guess I'm confused again. Are you owning the land, or are you renting the land, or?
We rent it from them.
Oh, okay, got it. Okay.
Yeah, we rent the land from them.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was curious. I mean, this is not as related, but just wondering how like it works to own property and land in Prague, but. Yeah.
You know, we've considered buying apartments, but I don't actually own land right now in Prague.
Got it.
That's fair,
okay.
So I can't really comment as a landowner.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's a little bit complicated as a foreigner, so it's one of the reasons why. Yeah, it's not so easy.
Okay, so in terms of the marketing for Manifesto Market, what was there one thing that really drove visitors? I think I read in your article 650,000 people in the first year.
Yeah, so we were open like 6 months in 2018. We opened in June and we closed in December, and we had like 650,000 people in the first 6 months. Now it's like about 800,000 people.
Wow.
Because we've been open 8 months now.
Was there a specific marketing campaign that like helped?
Specific campaigns, not so easy to answer.
Mm-hmm.
We did, I think it's not really a specific campaign. I think it's the diversity of campaigns that we ran. So we tried like a lot. We didn't try every channel. We didn't work on every channel, but we kind of like tried to optimize the work we were doing with Google. Like Google search was really important for us, and SEO was really important for us. The work we did with TripAdvisor was kind of important. It took a while to get started, but that's important work. Instagram has been really good for us. Like utilizing, actually we didn't spend almost any money on advertising in the first year. We didn't do any really paid campaigns or anything. Like maybe we promoted our Christmas market because it was kind of like also a huge risk to do this kind of outdoor market in the winter. But and that was our most successful campaign. We attracted like, I think there was like 18,000 event responses in 24 hours, and then in total the campaign, even the unpaid campaign, ran for 3 weeks, and we had something like 60,000 event responses. And for like this kind of event, it's pretty good being launched right before, not by a big agency, right? So yeah, so those actually, I'd say Facebook events are really important for us because this is like offers a lot of organic reach. So one of our models is to have culture events almost every day, particularly when it's warmer out. So we have DJs or bands or films, and we always host those on Facebook, and that's like a really easy way for people to share and understand what we're doing. We're not using, like, as a user, I'm barely using Facebook anymore because I don't know why. It's just like it's grown less interesting. But somehow it works really well for events, at least in this market still. Instagram has also been really successful for us. Our stories tend to pick up a lot of traffic and new users.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, for Manifesto Market, when you first had the vision, and then like when it first launched and everyone came, like how long was that time frame?
Probably 18 months.
18 months.
And
that's pretty fast.
Yeah, and when we finally had like a project, like we had a design and we had a partner, like we were ready to start moving, it was like maybe 6 months, and it was kind of crazy. I remember like we didn't even have all the money yet. Like we didn't have we had just a seed investor that gave us the money for staff, and I had already committed to building the containers. So we showed up to the factory, and I like was on the hill standing over this like huge field, and they had my containers in the field, and there was like 30 of them, and they were like half built, and I looked down and I was like, holy shit. was like, if we can't do this, like if I can't find the money, like I'm gonna stuff these containers into my apartment. Like, what am I gonna do with this stuff? So that was like the moment of truth. Like I got really scared, and this is like 2 months before we opened, actually. And so we ran back to Prague, and I called everyone I had been in touch with about potentially lending us money, and like within 2 days we found the money and we signed a deal. So it was still a huge risk, but at least like I was able to pay for them.
Okay. I guess going off of that, what was your biggest challenge in your journey? It could be from reSITE or from Manifesto Market, just like anything. What has been your biggest challenge?
The biggest challenge for me is always like saying no to good opportunities. Like now, since we opened Manifesto, it's been crazy. In the last 8 months, we've had probably like 30 plus requests to build new markets around the world, not just around Europe. So we're kind of like now taking those one by one. And every time I get a request, I'm like, wow, like let's build something in Bordeaux or Paris or LA. And so I get really excited by the new projects. And so we're now like crazily considering something in Lisbon, also in Bordeaux. Like these are the most serious. We're actually building the business model and everything for them. And we're actually seeking investment for Lisbon right now. And China, which also came to me like 6 months ago. It's crazy because we're attracting investment for this one in Lisbon right now, and that's pretty serious. I'm going to Bordeaux next week because that's also very serious. We're going to consider building something there. And China, which came to me like 6 months ago, and it's like totally crazy to go to China. We just opened this thing like 8 months ago. But I believe we know what we're doing. And in that case, they want us to build a different kind of project. Like they want me to build a hospitality, like a hotel with this kind of food and beverage and culture component. And I think that's a really good idea because I think we could know how to do that really well.
What's your ultimate goal with everything?
Yeah, well, I think we want to be like the #1 brand in the world for pop-up gastro environments and also like sort of alternative hospitality environments. So that's my goal, is to sort of like create new kinds of spaces for food and beverage and also hospitality.
I feel like that's like your life purpose.
No, I think my life purpose is to improve people's lives with design.
Awesome.
Right? And build like cool experiences for people that makes their life better. So that's my life purpose. And so we're doing it now with these kind of projects.
Cool.
Yeah.
So are there any other projects you have coming up?
Yes, we're opening actually another Manifesto Market. So we're working really hard on that right now. It's almost finished design, and we're going towards the fabrication of the containers now. So this will be a cool place that'll be kind of like gastro beer garden. So we'll have like mostly beer with Pilsner Urquell, so like a famous Czech beer, and also a lot of food that goes with kind of beer. So it would be kind of like a beer-focused place, which is actually not my preferred drink of choice, but it's locally really popular. So we want to kind of do this and surprise people with like foreign cuisine. So Czech beer and international kind of beer food.
Where's it going to be located?
It's
in Prague?
In the center of Prague again, but on the other side of the river, so in Prague 5.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So make sure to look out for that.
Yes, look out for that, and you should come to Prague and visit us.
Yes. Do you have like kind of last words or advice for people who might be interested in creating their own thing in terms of, I guess, design and real estate and type of thing, like what you're doing?
Yeah, my parting words of advice are don't listen to anything I said because you'll always be feeling like concerned and scared. No, I think like my advice maybe would be if you really feel passionate about something, then like don't take no for an answer ever. It sounds like a little bit cliche, but you'll hear so many no's in the process, and people will always tell you it's impossible or they can't do it, and you have to find a way to do it if you really feel passionately about it. Sometimes you just can't, like you might fail. That's okay. I think you have to fail in order to find something new. Make a mistake to learn, right? So that's kind of my parting word, I guess.
Awesome. Cool. I think this was super helpful for me and for like viewers and listeners out there.
I hope so. It was really fun for me too.
It was awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing your information, your knowledge.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you
awesome.
all.
Bye.
Thanks, Sharon.
Awesome.
See you.